Today's topic is workforce trends and realities in 2022 and beyond. Our HR resident, Karen Roberts, is trying to get a clear connection. She'll be joining us briefly. In the meantime, we have two local HR professionals, David Lyons and Susan Molke. And we'll start with you, Susan. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Molke. It's an honor to be here with you this morning. I have, we'll just say 20 plus years of experience with human resources as a generalist, as well as talent acquisition. And really talent acquisition is my specialty. I've been in leadership roles in both talent acquisition as well as human resources for some major companies down here in South Florida. And I actually just recently transitioned out of HR and back to talent acquisition, but more as a placing high-level consultants and people who are seasoned. So, and I'm specializing in human resource placements. So it all kind of connects and works together.
Great, great. Thank you. David, introduce yourself, please.
Sure. David Lyons, obviously, I work with ITHINK Financial, been at ITHINK Financial now for about 19 years. But I started working in HR. At the time, they didn't call it HR. They actually called it personnel management. So that was quite a few years ago, but worked in manufacturing and in healthcare, and now been in financial services now for quite a while. I did specialize when I first got into HR, but then I became, a generalist, a director of HR. And in fact, at this point, I'm actually the chief administrative officer for ITHINK Financial, and I have a director of human resources reporting up to me.
Great, great. Thank you both for introducing yourselves. We're going to start with you, Rosemary. Please feel free.
Okay, well, Rosemary Nixon, and I'm founder chair of Encore Palm Beach County. And I am not an HR person, but obviously I've always been interested in people and performance in organizations. I've managed nonprofit organizations. I've been in the finance sector myself. I've been in city planning. I've been a financial advisor. I've been a self-employed retirement coach. I've done a lot of different things. The world we're in today, I find fascinating with regard to human resources, particularly from the point of view that how can we help people, mature workers, get back into the workforce? I don't think that there's a lot of a lack of understanding that that has been difficult for a lot of people 50 plus who have lost their jobs over the last few years, even going back to the recession of 2000, 2008. And we read all these conflicting reports about how there's a shortage of workers. And at the same time, we read that there are all these people who would like to get back into the workforce, but are finding it difficult to do. And so we wonder, I, as a member of the public, of course, wonder what is the answer? What can we do to help people re-enter the workforce? And I think one of the questions, and David, perhaps you could read it, is facilitating the return of mature workers to the workplace. And Encore started a focus on this because we were reading two things. One was 10,000 people turn 65 every day in this country and are leaving the workforce. And workplaces are losing their skills, experience, and knowledge. At the same time, we read about the decline of the birth rate in this country. And to put it simply, we're not producing a lot of young people to be eventual workers. So I just, as a person out here looking at all this, find it very confusing. Can you guys help clarify?
Yeah, perhaps. I think that's what we're here for today. The first question, I think, addresses what you're getting at, Rosemary. It's the state of mature applicants today are experienced workers who left the workforce during the pandemic. Are they returning? I don't know that it's necessarily related to pandemic as much as it's related to the unemployment rate. I do see retirees applying for jobs, and largely because they're bored, they need the extra money, and they're looking for part-time and some flexibility. I did go back over the past 4 years just to look at our average hiring age, and it seems to be getting younger, not older. If I go back to 2019, the average age of the person that we hired was 40 years old. In 2022, the average age is 33. So it's continued to go down. And I don't know that that's a reflection of, I don't think that we're doing anything differently. I think it's a reflection of the applicants that we're getting for the positions that we have available. And it's probably because a lot of the positions that we have available are entry-level positions. We tend to do a lot of promotion from within. So, the entry-level jobs are the ones that I think that the younger folks are best suited for. And just kind of as a sidebar,
Thank you for trying.
Looking at the demographics of our company, the average age of all the employees is 44, and about 12.7% are over 60 years old. So, so we haven't really, I don't think, done anything differently. I think that the market is different. Susan, I don't know if you have another perspective on that.
No, actually, my perspective really mirrors everything that you've just said. Yes, I do see, mature workers returning back to work pre-COVID. Now, there's still a really good percentage and a handful that will stay retired. But, as David said, most of these people are they're bored. They're looking for something to do. And, they want to be able to control their work-life balance. They want to be able to say yes or no, to working or not if they feel like it. I've talked to quite a few. Most of them are bored, and a lot of them, though, are a little bit concerned about their financial future with the state of the world today and everything that's happening. So they want to be able to protect their investments and their retirement funds and such. So I am actually seeing that. I will say, just in addition to David's comment about entry level, I've been in lots of different industries and have literally recruited thousands upon thousands of people at all different levels, all different types of positions. And we'll probably get more into that later, but I do see the generational differences where we're hiring. Yes, entry level, it does make sense because they're unskilled, right? So we start bringing in younger workers. And then, but I'm with Stephen Douglas right now. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Stephen Douglas, and I work particularly specifically on their interim team. We only place high level folks, right? So anybody, I'll just say senior, we'll just say anybody senior. And of course, those people typically, tend to be more our age because they have the experience and they have the leadership and the management. So I get a lot of consultants. And as a matter of fact, we did our numbers as well, David, and just with our consultants that we're putting out, we have 30% of our staff is 50 and over. So because, companies want seasoned, they want somebody that can just come in and hit the ground running. So we absolutely are seeing that.
Thank you. And it appears that Karen may be back on. So Karen?
I did want to thank Rosemary and our two panelists for kicking things off so beautifully. I did want to share one additional comment to what our panelists said about the experienced and mature workers returning to the workforce. We are seeing, of course, with the inflation rates, what they are. I did speak with Julia Datello from the workforce board, career source. She did indicate that folks are a bit concerned about their retirement funds with the market volatility and the inflation, as I mentioned, and they are seeing a bit more of folks returning not only from the boredom and wanting to contribute aspect, but also some concerns about the finances. So that was, I'm sure, something that is on folks' mind as well. So again, panelists, thank you for handling question 1 so beautifully. The next question is, are you aware or have you read about employers making any changes or enhancements to their benefit packages that will address generational differences and benefit needs?
I'll answer first, David, if you're okay, because my
Sure,
answer
go
will
for
be
it.
kind of short. So far, in all honesty, and I wish it were a little bit different, I haven't seen many companies organizing around general differences for, for benefits. Now, what I can say, that they're not necessarily thinking about it today, but the benefits, I think what most companies that I know that all the companies that I've been with, it's more about cost. How much are these benefits packages, going to cost us? And how much is it going to cost the employers or employees? So I think that's their priority mindset. And then the second thing is that they do generally offer an array of benefits, and it typically does cover the demographic for their companies, right? So if they can afford to offer 401k, they do offer 401k. And of course they have, the Medicare and stuff for mature workers approaching that time period, you generally through a third party. But I'm not seeing anything super special. I haven't, also they have like an educational component to that. But that's typical, and that seems to be what's been offered. But I haven't seen anything super out of the box or anything fantastic.
Mhm.
I think the costs
Thank
are
you,
really just
Susan.
astronomical.
Thank you, Susan. David, would you like to share?
Sure. I would agree with Susan that I don't see benefits being tailored for any particular generation, but we offer a broad spectrum of benefits. I mean, very, very broad, and probably the largest and most expensive one is the medical plan. And I think it's a little bit unusual, but but we cover like 80% of the cost of both single and family plans. So that's where most of the money is. But one of the things that I am finding, and is that a lot of the younger workers are opting out of the medical plan, and of course we make them show us that they have some other medical care coverage. But I think that part of that is related to the law in Florida that allows children to stay on their parents' medical plan up to age 30. So I think that makes a difference. And then we do offer a small incentive for people who don't want the medical plan. They get like $15 a week, and it adds up to about $750 a year. But there isn't, I say it's a broad spectrum of benefits that I think covers a lot of the needs or interests of all employees, but it's not particular to a generation, no.
Well, thank you. And yes, that law about covering the dependents, whether they live with a parent or not, up into that age is very helpful. Sometimes folks don't realize, employers, that if someone 65 plus is on Medicare, they may, or a Medicare Advantage plan, they may not need the employer benefits, which many times employers believe that hiring older workers is going to be expensive from a benefit perspective, because the thought is that they'll have more medical issues or concerns. So that might be something for employers to keep in mind. And I have been reading some things about putting benefits in place that would impact generations. Obviously, younger people are concerned about student loans and loan debt from school. And then, as parents, they have issues. And then as more mature workers, there's some other concerns closer to retirement, et cetera. So there could be some work there. As you said, David and Susan, a lot of money is being spent on these benefits and perhaps doing a bit more tailoring to ensure that their money is being spent as efficiently as possible to help the greatest number of folks in the workplace might be something to do. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Our next
Karen,
question, yes, please, David.
well, I was just going to add that when you mentioned student loan debt, that just reminded me is that a few years ago, we did implement a student loan forgiveness program that employees can take advantage of. So I guess that's a generational thing, perhaps.
Oh. It is, and many times parents and even grandparents are helping their loved one with student loan debt, and many times mature workers are going back to school themselves. So that is a benefit that might help across the spectrum. I know in the not-for-profit community, many folks don't know, but once a person has worked for 10 years in a not-for-profit, they are eligible and they have paid for 10 years on their student loan, they can apply for forgiveness because they are working in a not-for-profit. So that's just another benefit that perhaps people don't tout if they're in that not-profit sector. So thank you, David, for adding about your program. Sounds wonderful. At our inaugural event that Encore Palm Beach County hosted last year, the Wisdom and Experience Works for Business Award, our keynote speaker was economist Chris Farrell, and he made some very intriguing and inspirational remarks that intergenerational conflict is not as much of a reality as some think. Are you seeing organizations leverage generations for enhanced productivity, or are you seeing any indication of conflict amongst the generations? And Susan, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. This was a really interesting question for me. I think companies do leverage. I absolutely do think they leverage, for knowledge, education, practical experience, creative endeavors, things like that. It feels organic to me, less than designed, right? So for me, it feels more organic. And I'll give you an example of that. If you're hiring a social media manager, okay, that's generally going to be somebody, a millennial, right? Because people, mature workers from Generation X and such, we use it, we get it, we understand it, but not to the level that they do, right? That's their culture. That's how they're being brought into this world. And so, but if you're looking to hire, like with Stephen Douglas for my organization, if you're looking to hire, a senior controller for an interim type project, we're certainly going to be, hiring somebody, who's got that experience, someone more Gen X for that. So I do think it happens. I think it's organic. And the other thing to think is interesting is that companies might tend to shy away from that a little bit because we're trained and we're taught and told over and over and over again that we cannot discriminate against age, right? So we get nervous, we get scared. Whoa, we can't do that, right? But it does happen. It's an organic thing to me, and anyway, things that I have seen.
Thank you. David.
Sure. Well, I'd have to agree with your speaker last year, Chris Farrell. I don't see conflict on the job between generations. I mean, if anything, there might be some cultural differences that run into conflict more than, I'll say, age related differences, generational differences. I do hear people make generalizations about different age groups, like these young people, they just don't want to work anymore. They're not committed anymore. And the older workers are, harder to train or it takes longer to train, but they're extremely loyal. Reality is that once they're on the job, I would say that the workers that are over 40 probably do stick around a little bit longer. They appreciate the benefit structures a little bit more. I do see that the folks that we hire that are under 30 years old will stick around maybe for a couple of years. they're very anxious to be promoted. And if they're not promoted in their first year or two, then, they're looking someplace else, and they can, because again, it goes back to, the employment market.
I think industry plays a difference too, David. I don't know if you've experienced that or not, but I've definitely seen a difference for more creative environments.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pay your dues type of an industry. So even if young folks come in early, they typically stick around for a little while, because again, you have to pay your dues, and that goes from company to company to company. It's not just one company over another. So I do think that industry does play a role into that. And yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. The older generation workforce, we're concerned about our retirement, our children. We've got way more responsibilities than the young workforce does if they're coming in single with no children, right? And if they're just starting out, they can certainly afford to jump around a little bit while they're figuring out life.
Right.
Well, interesting perspective. Thank you for that. The industry could play a role, and just the lack of more structured responsibilities could play a role, of course, into that opportunity for promote or out, as David said. Promote me, or I'm on my way to another opportunity. So our next question is, what is your organization doing, or what are other organizations doing that you may be aware of in regards to preparing workers for retirement and perhaps helping them figure out what is next?
Mm-hmm.
Susan?
Yeah, I can start with that. This is a sad state of affairs that I am not seeing much, other than offering, the benefits packages. And again, 401k, maybe having some education, some third parties coming on to talk about, savings and IRAs and things outside of what an employer can actually afford and or offer. I'm not really seeing too much, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
We're not really helping. We're not sitting down with these folks, and saying, how can we help you after this? It's more like, here, if you have a pension or a 401k, good luck with that. Let us know if you need anything. I absolutely think we could certainly do more, but I don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure.
Okay,
people
thank
do.
you. Thank you, Susan. Other than saying, here's the rollover information should you need it, right? For your 401k. David, how would you like to respond to that one?
Well, we actually, I think that we do quite a bit. We do offer our employees both a 401k and a cash balance pension plan. The 401k, obviously, participation is really important to us because, well, for a number of reasons, but not the least of which is that you want the average contribution for the non-highly compensated employees to at least be at a point where the highly compensated employees can maximize their 401k contributions as well. So we do a lot of education, and we have about 96% of our employees are enrolled in the 401k. We do put well, I say impose, they can always opt out, but we do an automatic enrollment when they get hired. And we increase that by 1% each year up to a maximum of 5%. I know that there's some legislation out there proposed to make that a little bit more structured for everybody. But we hold at least quarterly webinars for employees so that they can be educated on the tools and the investment options that they have available. And I guess this is probably unique to our industry as well, being in financial services. We have financial advisors on staff for our members, but also for our employees to help them understand and plan for retirement. So on a regular basis, we will hold public like Social Security seminars and things like that, so that people can understand, what that process is. Let's see. Yeah, and then at least once a year in the fall, usually, we invite all of our employees who are over 60 years old to a special presentation that talks about that retirement and getting, through these next, 5 or 10 years or however many more years that they're going to be working. So I think that we do a fair amount, and probably a lot more than other companies do. But again, that may be industry specific because we're in financial services.
So David, the next question though is, are you hiring?
Well, we basically, we always have
I
positions
know.
open. Yeah, right.
No, that's great. That's
Wonderful.
great that you do so much.
Yes, and I think what's congratulations and kudos on that percentage participation in the 401k. And we'll just take a moment to remind folks, which I'm sure some of our folks in the chat have already mentioned, that we also want to think as employers about preparing our folks psychologically and mentally for retirement. I know that's one of the missions of Encore, Palm Beach County, whether that be to move on to another opportunity for pay, for volunteer, to start their own business, whatever that next step may be. And our very own Christine has a wonderful program that she's put together to help people figure out what's next. So that's something you could find a bit more about. And that's something that individuals can be encouraged to seek out on their own. It doesn't have to be employer provided. But many people may wake up, the day after retirement and the party was lovely, and okay, what do we do next? And that's one of the missions of our organization. So thank you for sharing what you all do. And again, it is a partnership jointly between the employee and the employer to ensure folks are ready to take that next leap and that next encore career, as they say, after they leave your organization. So our next question is, speaking of a bit about volunteering, what are you seeing around corporate social responsibility and volunteerism as not only a way to increase employee engagement, but also, again, perhaps to get people thinking about mentorship or what is next for them after retirement? So any thoughts around corporate social responsibility and volunteerism?
You can go ahead, David.
Sure, yeah. Well, Karen, I think that you're a little bit familiar with our organization, so but I'll share that we are a not-for-profit. We are not a nonprofit, but we are a not-for-profit, and as a not-for-profit, we're owned basically by the members of that come in and want to get loans and be part of our credit union, actually. And so we're very community focused, and it's through community involvement that we've, I think, been able to create a brand awareness, a reputation, as well as employee engagement. So there's a number of things that we do. I mentioned before that we had a student loan forgiveness program. So for example, if employees participate in one of our community events each month, then each month that they get $100 towards that goes actually directly to their loan provider to pay off their student debt. In all, and we're not just in Florida, we're up in Georgia as well. We participate in over 100 community events every month. And employees are encouraged to participate with us. And we get about 60% of our employees participating, but we have an internal community calendar. So employees can simply go on that calendar and they can say, hey, there's a group in my community that I want to sponsor and they do this community event and I'm going to be involved. And, and then we would sponsor that. We'd either put some money to it or, we'd have other employees go out and work that event. And it's been extremely valuable. I mean, we get employees that say, I'm proud to work for a company that is so involved in the community. So I think it's very engaging.
Yeah, and
Well,
I'll
that's
piggyback off of
wonderful.
that.
Susan?
Oh, sorry, Karen. I was gonna say, I'll
Nope.
piggyback off of that. I think most organizations today, and certainly the ones I've been involved with, are heavily active. And for the reasons, same thing, right? You're trying to give back to the community. You're building a culture for people that you want to, you're trying to recruit and engage to join your organizations, people of like-mindedness. So besides, philanthropic, I've been engaged with companies that also are doing things for the environment, right? And that could be or financial. So even purchasing, fair trade goods only, or things just if we're trying to amp up, we're only going to buy things out of the United States or by these certain vendors, right? So I've seen all of that, and it's really important. And then I'll stress that I'm seeing it even more and more and more. Because as we are talking to the younger generations, that's a big question for them. That's part of who they are. That's a cultural aspect that's incredibly important to them. How are we giving back? How are we handling, the world today? How are we handling, our economy? They just seem to be more involved for sure. So we are absolutely looking into that, and everything from Susan G. Komen, runs to Habitat for Humanity, to the Salvation Army, underprivileged children, cancer. We've done it all. So it's a great thing that continues to happen and grow.
Well, that's wonderful, both of you. You're to be commended for that level of commitment to this. And certainly as HR professionals, we know that having a great community brand from our marketing perspective also parallels our employee value proposition. Again, why would an employee want to come to work for our organization? And these types of commitments to social responsibility and to volunteerism are part of what draws applicants in this very low unemployment world to our organization. So it's really an important strategy for organizations to follow. And I wanted to interject as well, career source, Julia Datello, she had shared some examples of things they're doing as well. And she indicated that she just assisted some other female CEOs. They completed houses for 2 single moms through Habitat for Humanity. So everybody is understanding that value of helping others, which is great for our communities. And also it certainly helps employee engagement, and employees feel proud to work for our organizations. So thank you, both of you, for that. And just continuing a bit on that employee engagement theme, what are you seeing post-pandemic, if anything different than we've just chatted about, in the levels of employee engagement? Are you seeing any change? Just please talk a little bit about that if you've noticed any trends over the last couple of years. David, do you want to start on that one?
Sure. Well, the biggest and most obvious is I'll say remote work. It was something that we were forced to sort of break the mold of saying, well, this is all what we've done in the past, and we always had a few employees to work remote, but we're probably about 50% of our staff has some remote component, if not a full-time remote component. And what I'm finding is that if I put remote in an advertisement for an open position, I get many more applications than if I don't put remote, if it's in office. And from a generational standpoint, I'll say that, and this is really just anecdotal, I'll say that some of the older workers enjoy being in the office a little bit more than the younger workers. The younger workers really want the flexibility of being remote more.
Yeah, I'm seeing similar to that. I mean, I see, plenty of engagement. I don't want to say more engagement. I want to say it's different. Again, and again, backing the remote and the hybrid type environments, we have to foster more engagement because we are not face to face. So whether we're using a new technology, a new communication app, we're flying people into headquarters or to one area or regional area, to get together, to do some kind of team building and stuff, because you do need to foster that engagement, and you still need to have face-to-face at times. Again, it could be industry or position specific, but we are seeing that and people enjoy it. Where I'm seeing a difference generation, I'm not really seeing a difference generationally. More of, if the commute is very far, I don't need to drive 45 minutes to an hour in traffic and do that if I can be more productive at home, because I'm not going to have the same type of disruptions and interruptions throughout the day. I don't have to go to 5 senseless meetings. All I have to do is send an email or jump on Slack, and we can kind of text it out, types of things. So I am seeing that, and also people are more concerned with performing, because now IT can certainly, I don't want to say, spy, but I mean, they're absolutely being able to monitor some of the work that's happening, right? They can monitor when people are signing on, when they're signing off. There's a constant, engagement that has to happen because we need to be in front of you. So things like that. So I am actually seeing people engaged a little bit more because they need to be. They need to be.
Well, thank you both. And definitely that driving commute, the amount of traffic, et cetera, does play into roles as to why someone may or may not apply for something, depending on how far of a drive they may have to have, particularly after the ability to work from home. The last couple of years has been a boon for staying out of traffic. So I do know that that commute issue is still a big one. So thank you for mentioning what you're seeing in that regard. Our next question has to do with the focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that that is very important. It's something that is on the top of mind of HR professionals everywhere these days. Are you seeing a focus on age as a dimension of diversity? Of course, it is one, but if we had to rank it, are we seeing it bubbling up, or are we just seeing it being equal, or what trends are you seeing as it refers to age as an element of diversity? Mm-hmm. And Susan, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, again, I've commented on this earlier as a recruiter, okay? As a recruiter, I'm not wearing my HR hat now, I'm wearing a recruiter's hat, talent acquisition. We're trained to not think about age ever, okay? We're looking at skill set, that's it, doesn't matter how old you are, right? And again, that's where the organic nature of this comes in. If somebody is a graphic artist, they're gonna tend to be younger using new technologies, if you will. I just don't, I see it. I do see times where the generational hires are unavoidable. And again, like I said earlier, if you're looking for a high level consultant to hit the ground running, well, somebody entry level is just not going to have that kind of experience, right? They're just not there in their career. So I do see it. And again, it's a little bit more of an organic thing, but we do leverage it. We absolutely 100% leverage those skills and that knowledge base. Or something different that I might not have today. Technology, for instance, we use technology. I'm not the greatest at it, but I would leverage absolutely somebody who's probably younger than I am and much more adept with technology, but we see it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, David.
Yes, Karen. So about 3 years ago, I went to senior management and I said, well, we need a DEI program. And their response to me was, why? We treat everybody equally.
That's
I try to explain to them that equal is not necessarily equitable, but that there is this diversity and we really should recognize what it is. And most of the time people would think of race when they think of diversity. And of course I wanted it to be much more than that, because it is much more than that. So So we started this, I did a survey first off of all of the employees to try to capture, what's the awareness level and what's the perspective. And in that survey, there was at least one area of open-ended comments. And out of the 55 comments that I got, there was one regarding age. So and in the discussions and the meetings and the presentations that we've done and the way that we've interacted with employees, age has not been a major component of identifying, the diversity or a question of equity or inclusion amongst the demographics in the company. So yes, it is there. Yes, it is acknowledged. But it hasn't been a major focus, and because it hasn't been a major issue either.
Mhm. Okay, well, that could be good news, right? That, as you said, it's everyone is feeling included, and it's not that they're feeling excluded due to age or anything like that. So that can be that could be a very good data point for your organization. So thank you for sharing, both of you. The next question has to do with fostering not only teamwork, but also knowledge transfer across an age diverse organization. And we know the danger or the loss of talent, the loss of knowledge, the loss of experience that can happen when folks retire and walk out the door. And so what are our organizations doing to foster that knowledge transfer while the mature worker is still there? And of course, many organizations utilize a mentoring program, whether formal or informal. So what could you two share that you've either seen or you feel is the best way to encourage not only teamwork, but the knowledge transfer? David, would you like to start?
Sure, of course. So for us, I guess I would put it in category of employee retention. And yes, you're going to have, people retiring, or you're going to have people changing jobs. So it's really just about, retaining, identifying, number one, your high performers, and then targeting at least those folks to make sure that you're hanging on to them. So we do have what we call a talent matrix. So we try to identify, we get the managers to identify where a person is in terms of their talent potential in any particular position. And that for us helps determine what sort of training or counseling that we might give that employee going forward. Again, I said that we promote a lot from within, and we've been very, very successful with it. Every position, virtually every position, 99% of the positions that are open are posted internally first to employees. And so that creates a great opportunity to have a person go from, I'm hiring people on the teller line with bachelor's degrees because they look at the organization, they say, well, hey, I can get promoted. I know that there's opportunity here in advance. And I want to say that our average length of employment is like 10 years, I think, a little bit more than 10 years. And I think that that's a pretty good stat comparatively. But I would say that just, from a sort of an everyday standpoint, some of the things that really work well is when you're bringing on new staff is to have them work with older staff to help train and develop them, have them work on projects together. I'll say too that participating in community events together is an excellent way to engage people across generations and different talent levels, so that when they come back into the workplace, it's a much easier communication process, a much easier work sharing process. So those are some of the things that we do. And I think that they work really well.
Yeah, and
Well, thank you.
I'll agree
ahead,
with that.
Susan.
I'll say I agree with that, David. It is more about retention, I think, for organization, so that, you know, your turnover rate is try to be as low as possible, because we know how expensive that also gets.
Yeah.
And we do the same types of things. Yes, you have to identify your high performers. And we do something, I personally, I develop an onboarding, program for every company that I'm with. And I always build in a buddy program. I think that's, David, kind of what you were talking about, have them, be with different workers and such. A buddy program is a great way. You can get different generations together, because if you're going to be, showing the younger generation the ropes, who's going to show them the ropes? But, the more mature workers, right? And then they can learn from each other. And that kind of ties into mentoring, not only down, but mentoring up, right? So you can have a mentor and a mentee of different age, different generational ages, and they can really help each other out. Like, and I wasn't kidding about, the technology piece, or even social media pieces. Those are things that are part of our world today that, admittedly, we use them, but maybe we don't know them well enough to be super effective like a younger generation might. So those are examples of things we've done. Also, yeah, agree with the team building. And that could be professional, that can be, the philanthropic, it could be volunteerism, it could be any of those types of things. And of course, developing those succession plans, career tracks, to David's point about, being able to promote people, and especially as they grow, and especially as they grow, not only in age, but in skill set. So we are actually seeing that. As a matter of fact, in my last organization, or last couple organizations, when we did our annual performance reviews and we set them for the next year, that was a big question that we asked every single person. What do you want to do? What do you want to see? What do you want to learn? And we would build in a KPI of 20% that they would have to do some stretch engagements, some stretch assignments. So potentially working with another team, to learn something else. So in David's case, it could be, I don't know, a teller, they want to be in loan, maybe commercial loans or something like that, then great. Then they would pair them up with somebody more skilled and qualified in that team to learn about that, and maybe be engaged in a project. But then they'd have to actually come back and tell us what they learned. They'd have to show us what they've learned, and whether that's a group assignment or a presentation, or putting that to use. But we did that.
Excellent ideas, both of you. These are wonderful things if anyone is contemplating nominating their organization for the Wisdom and Experience Works for Business Award. Both what David and Susan said are just some fine examples of the types of things that do show an organization valuing mature workers, and also showing the commitment to engagement through the internal promotional opportunities, et cetera. So everything that you said, I say kudos and congrats to both of you on those responses. I'm just going to add one brief comment about this question. And then in looking at the time, I see that we have one question left and we're getting close to the end of the time. So I think I'll pass on our last question, but I just want to make one last comment on this one and then see if we have any questions from our folks on the line. But one thing I just came across that I had not heard of before, and this was brought to my attention through the SHRM Learning System, Society for Human Resource Management, the certification program, is something called a knowledge cafe. And what it is, it's a facilitated session for about an hour and a half, where folks can come together. They don't have to be invited per se, meaning it's not, it's open to who feels that they can make a contribution. It's an opportunity and a space for folks to enhance problem solving, enhance awareness of capabilities across the organization. Sometimes we don't realize some hidden capabilities that our folks have. It's also a way to enhance networking and knowledge transfer opportunities. So if you haven't heard of it, just Google Knowledge Cafe. I just did that this morning and found it to be a fascinating concept. So I think what I'll do here is stop, thank our panelists immensely, and turn it over to you, Christine, to see if anybody from the audience has any questions. And I, again, have enjoyed this immensely, and I want to thank our two panelists. So Christine, take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Susan and David. That was great information. Very valuable, I'm sure, to everyone on the line. Does anyone have any questions? Please feel free to put it in the chat or unmute yourself. Go right ahead, Mark.
I'll unmute myself. I'm curious, when you said the fact that people who are retired returning back to looking for jobs, are they returning back to the same industry and career paths they left, or are they wanting to do something new?
Mark, I'm seeing both. And again, it just depends on the industry. So I worked in the retail industry where many of the retirees were coming back into retail because, and they've never done it before, because it was something pretty quick and easy. They could learn, they could train quickly on it, and they could be successful at it, especially if they were being paid, with a commission or something. And they could control their hours a little bit more and their work-life balance. So I have seen a little bit of an industry switch, and just kind of depending on what it is. But for the most part, like where I am today, they're staying within the same industry. And as a matter of fact, we want them because we need their expertise. We need, their knowledge base that they've acquired over the years. So I'm actually seeing a good, healthy mix of both of that.
I would agree with that, Susan. Folks come back and they've got some knowledge about a particular area. So I'm not really seeing people go into completely different industries, completely different jobs. They usually have some sort of background. And maybe that's one of the reasons that they're even interested. I don't know.
Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We know that a lot of people retired during the pandemic because they didn't want to go into an office. And it's been difficult to try and get is what's happened to these people. We've heard that anecdotally they're returning to the workforce, but it's like I've queried a whole bunch of job clubs across the country, and so many have gone out of business or have incredibly low participation rate. Where did all these people go? Are they back at work? Are they retired? Where are they? And I don't know.
I think it depends on their motivation as well, right, Mark? If they're motivated by money, then they're probably going to stick with the industry that they know. If it's more of a boredom and I need something to do, they might, and maybe they don't want to go back into the stress and the political issues that they have at their job. Maybe they just want to just leave the house for a couple hours a day, and so they would do something a little bit more, mundane, retail, for instance. So I think it just depends on what the motivation is.
Good
but they're
point.
back.
They're back. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Rosemary?
Yes, I thank you. I just want to make a comment and a question. I had to chuckle about the work from home issue. Back in 1970, I applied for a job that was 50 miles from where I lived in New England. And I almost didn't get the job because people wondered whether a woman could handle a commute of 50 miles each way every day in snow, sleet, and freezing rain. I got the job and I did that commute for the next 18 years. Would have loved to have been able to work from home. But I would like to ask a question about the social responsibility as it relates to people pre-retirement. People that at some point will be leaving the organization and helping them to make a transition. Organizations such as yours, David, sponsor many community events, and that's great. And in fact, I would like to take the opportunity here to thank ITHINK for being a sponsor of our Wisdom and Experience event coming up in October. But my observation of most of that kind of activity is that it is a group activity or an event activity that is sponsored. And I just wonder how much effort is there to support the individual employee to get involved as a volunteer in various organizations that meet their particular interests and needs, as apart from being a part of a group effort. That can be a very valuable transition tool for people entering retirement. In fact, the Center for Longevity has shown that there is a marked decline in our society of people volunteering in their pre-retirement years. And that research has shown that people who begin as volunteers while they're working tend to be volunteers after they retire. So I was just wondering, has there been some thinking about that? And on the other side, whether there is anything going on in terms of businesses loaning employees to, say, nonprofits to help them with projects as part of a transition to retirement. I manage 2 nonprofits in Hartford, Connecticut, and the local corporations loaned us executives all the time to help with problems. Do you see any of this going on?
Mhm. Well, we, I agree with you that the sort of this psychological transition for somebody entering into retirement is there's definitely a need there. It is not something that we formally address other than through financial planning. But what we do try to foster is the notion that community involvement and volunteering is the right thing to do. It's how we want the community and our employees to see us, and we certainly hope that that helps to create, a mindset for those employees at every age, at every generation level. Again, we do offer employees, and they take advantage of it. That we encourage them. If you have a charity in your community that you want to support, that you're involved with, and you want to put that on the community calendar, and you want us to sponsor it, then we're absolutely open to doing that. So it's sort of, it's a culture of community support that we're really trying to that we're trying to build, and it helps us as well. But I think it engages the employees. It gives them something to be proud of the organization that they're working for, and it helps us in terms of being an employer of choice as well. So the other day I'm asking my recruiter, I said, with the unemployment rate down at 2.7%, are you having a difficulty finding, applicants? And the answer was no. I'm still finding, some, good applicants. I'm not finding as many because there's just not that many people looking. But yeah, being an employer of choice, building a culture of community support and volunteerism has worked well for us, but I think it's also worked well for individual employees.
Susan, anything to add to that before we close out?
Yeah, I would just say I agree with that. I do know that there are industries out there and there are organizations that do a much better job at preparing, their older workforce for retirement. I do know that that exists. I don't know them, but I've heard of them. We actually have some clients at Stephen Douglas that do that, but they're usually hospitals. Healthcare, I seem to think, does a lot of that. Any type of government, positions, I know that they do a lot more of that type of transitioning than a private employer might. But, again, I would kind of agree, building in that 20% that we did, and this was at Office Depot, by the way, when we did 20%, we allowed people to volunteer do whatever they wanted to do. And then again, they just kind of have to report on it. So whether they were lending their own skill sets to another department or another store during busy times, or people, were sick, whatever the case may be, they had the flexibility to kind of choose what was near and dear to them, right? And near and dear to their heart. So, but other than that, I wish I could say more that it's beneficial for them psychologically, but we just did not get involved in all of that.
Mhm. Thank you. And thank you both for your great and valuable information. Rosemary, any brief final thoughts? We are almost 10 minutes over.
I just want to say thank you to Susan and David
And Karen.
and Karen for your contribution today to our understanding. And look forward to seeing both of you at Encore events in the future. Thank you.
Be there.
Thank you all
so
for
much.
joining us. Thank you. The recording will be available on our YouTube channel in about a week or so, and look for it online as well in our newsletter. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Have a
Take
great
care.
day.